Hello. August marks the beginning of one of my favourite times of year when everything feels quite lush and full and the harvests really begin. And so today I'm going to share some of the things that you can do in your garden to help you have a better garden next year and maybe enjoy the one you have for even longer. I'm Zorab and this is Byther Farm. There are a lot of slugs out this morning, so I've come out on a very wet morning with my gloves on and I'm removing the slugs. I'm going to put them into a bucket and take them over to a compost heap where they'll do a whole load of good. More importantly, they won't be eating my runner bean plants. This one is really struggling where it's had so much slug damage. Luckily, some others have done really well. If you haven't already done so, now is the time to cut back lavender plants. Cutting them back does two things. One is it helps to prevent them from becoming very straggly in future years. And two, it encourages plenty of new growth. So I cut back into the growing leaves, but not as far back as into the brown wood. If you cut into that, usually it won't regenerate. So just cut the silvery green leaves. I actually try and cut the tips of all of them on the plant, which encourages masses of new growth, so that next year we'll have a much fuller, much bushier plant and hopefully lots more of those lovely lavender flowers. And stay on top of weeding. Keep lifting pernicious weeds like this creeping buttercup, and also any self-sown plants, so volunteer plants that you just decide you don't want growing in your bed. However, you don't need to throw these ones away. These you can transplant into somewhere where you do want them. And now is a great time to take cuttings of some of your favourite shrubs. So this is a really pretty fuchsia which I grew from a cutting from a plant from our last home. This lovely fuchsia here is a hardy fuchsia and I really like it, and as you can see it grows really big. So I've got a piece here, it's a non-flowering piece, it's quite a horizontal piece. The end is still soft growth and then a bit further back it becomes a little bit more woody, and I'm going to cut below a leaf joint like this. So having done that, the very next thing I'm going to do is get it into the bag to try and avoid it drying out from evaporation. Here's the hardy fuchsia, and there were 4 in here, and when I had a look earlier on there was one that just had the tiniest little piece of root in it, so I've potted that one up separately. But very clearly there are new leaves growing on these 3, and if I dig down and take out one of the plants to have a look and see what the root is doing, if indeed it's doing anything, let's have a look. So we have got tiny, I don't want to damage the roots, but there are tiny new roots growing. Let's pop that back in. So I'm making a hole and putting it in rather than just pushing it into the soil, because I don't want to risk damaging those fragile little roots. So I'm not going to do it with all 3 on this. I'll assume that as the other 2 are have got new leaves on them as well, they've got those tiny little root systems growing. Nothing coming out of the bottom yet, but this new growth is really good. 2 of them took, which I'm really pleased about, and I have them planted on each side of the rose arch. I love the golden colour of the leaves combined with this fuchsia pink and purple flower. It's also seriously hardy, so it's a really good one for this garden. One of the jobs that I spend most of the time doing in the summer is deadheading. And I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it because it can be very time consuming. But alternatively, it's incredibly relaxing and I really like the results of it. And there are really good reasons to be deadheading. When a plant produces a flower and it's pollinated and starts going to seed, a message is sent to the plant to say, you've done your job, you've produced seeds, you have reproduced for another generation. And so you can stop making flowers, you can stop exerting all that energy to produce flowers, which is great if you're a plant, not so great if you're a gardener and you want more flowers. And for those of us who are vegetable gardeners, more flowers often means more vegetables. So if we want beans, for example, they'll need to flower first to produce the beans. And by picking those seed pods, the bean pods, we'll send a message to the plant to produce more, which is great because then we get more to harvest. And then the other, more practical reason is to reduce the amount of plant material in any one area and allow air to flow through, and that in turn will reduce the chances of fungal infections. So deadheading is really easy. You can just literally use your finger and thumb and pop the seed head off like that, and quite often it will ping everywhere and that's really good fun. But if I can, I prefer to bring out my secateurs or even a pair of scissors. I like to take not only the seed head but also the stem back down to where it joins the plant, and that allows for maximum airflow within that plant shape. And now is also an ideal time to take rose cuttings. I would really like another of these climbers. So principle is the same. I'm going to be looking for a non-flowering shoot. I'm not going to use these lovely big ones because actually I want to train those so that the climber goes along this archway and one of them will go straight up and over. So let's have a look. This piece looks good. It's still quite soft, so it's not. It hasn't become too woody yet. I'm kind of cut below a leaf node. There we go, properly below it, and then remove the leaves, because if these go into the soil, they're just going to rot off. There we go, and there is one rose cutting. Continue to sow seeds of fast growing crops. Now I'm going to grow them in my veggie pod. I was sent this earlier in the year, and it's a raised bed growing system. I wasn't sure I was going to like it, but I really do. So I'm going to sow a few more seeds. These are of beetroot. I'll just make a little drill, so just running my fingers across the soil to make a little dent in it, and I'm going to plant my seeds about 2 inches apart. So I could multi-sow them, so put 2 or 3 at a time, but I'm actually just going to put them a few inches apart. Down here. Now preferably sow your seeds onto damp soil and don't forget to water them afterwards. So once you've sown them, cover them over with a little compost. I think I'm going to do a second row here. So I was sceptical about whether the veggie pod would be any use actually, but I've never had my mind change so completely about something. It's turned out to be a really good system. So the cover on it creates a really good growing atmosphere in here, and there is a watering system so I can sprinkle it if I need to. They're actually like wicking beds, so they have a water reservoir underneath, but there's a hole to let out if there's excess water, to let that out. And it just, I kind of nurtures everything really nicely in here. I'm super impressed with it. And I keep all sorts of things to hand. So I keep a set of secateurs in here, more because then I know where they are than anything else. But I have grown all sorts of things in here. So I literally just sprinkled some lettuce seeds earlier in the year. Here are the lettuces. I've got herbs growing on. And at this end, I've got a whole load of carrots that I just scattered some seeds in here earlier in the year, not thinking they'd do very much. But actually, they're not bad at all. They're still very small because they're still young. But I've been very impressed with how well everything is growing in here. In fact, I probably need to eat some of these carrots as tiny baby carrots to give these lettuces a little bit more space. Anyway, back to the seeds. You can carry on sowing seeds of fast growing crops right through the late summer and into early autumn. And if you want to know which fast growing seeds you can still sow, I'll leave a link on the screen and in the video description.